In 1848, following the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the United States Army took on a massive geographic responsibility. By acquiring over 500,000 square miles of territory from Mexico, the nation expanded its borders from Texas to the California coast, doubling the area the Army was required to patrol and supply. To secure this region, the War Department established a network of isolated forts across the Southwest. But as supply lines pushed deeper into arid basins, military planners encountered a severe operational limit. Traditional Army transport was ill-suited for long-distance desert logistics. The Army relied primarily on horses, oxen, and pack mules. In temperate eastern territories, these animals grazed on lush vegetation along the trail. In the dry scrubland of New Mexico, Arizona, and West Texas, natural forage and surface water were scarce. As supply routes lengthened, an increasing share of every wagon load had to be reserved for animal feed and water. A team of 6 mules pulling a heavy wagon consumed large quantities of grain each day. On extended desert marches, draft animals spent much of their energy hauling their own food rather than provisions for garrisoned troops. When water sources dried up during seasonal droughts, supply trains routinely ground to a halt. The quartermaster department found itself caught in an expensive loop, allocating substantial portions of its annual budget simply to move feed between remote posts. To address this logistical bottleneck, officers who had served in the Mexican-American War proposed an unconventional solution, importing desert pack animals from North Africa and the Levant. The primary sponsor of the initiative was Secretary of War Jefferson Davis, who argued that the terrain of the American Southwest closely resembled the arid environments of the Mediterranean basin. In March 1855, Congress approved a $30,000 appropriation to test the concept. Davis assigned Brevet Major Henry C. Wayne of the Quartermaster Department to manage animal selection, and Lieutenant David Dixon Porter of the United States Navy to handle maritime transport. In May 1855, Lieutenant Porter took command of the store ship USS Supply. Transporting dozens of large animals across 3,000 miles of ocean required custom naval engineering. Porter constructed a 60-foot deck barn on the ship's spar deck, cut specialized hatchways, fashioned heavy canvas hoisting slings, and installed wind sail ventilation systems to force fresh air into the lower stalls. Major Wayne visited Tunis, Malta, Smyrna, and Alexandria, selecting 33 animals representing a mix of heavy two-humped Bactrians and fast single-humped dromedaries. To manage the stock, the officers hired several experienced Mediterranean handlers, including a young Ottoman citizen named Haji Ali, whom American troopers would later call High Jolly. The Atlantic crossing lasted 87 days. Porter's ventilation system kept the herd healthy through severe ocean storms, and one calf born at sea survived the voyage. On May 14, 1856, 34 camels landed at Indianola, Texas. Major Wayne marched the herd inland to establish an operational test post at Camp Verde, 60 miles northwest of San Antonio. There, the Army constructed timber enclosures modeled on traditional caravanserais and began testing how the animals adapted to southwestern conditions. Initial reports were encouraging. The camels adapted well to the climate, handling both summer heat and winter freezes. Their wide padded feet moved easily over dry sand and loose gravel, while their thick skin tolerated sharp brush. To evaluate freight efficiency, Major Wayne conducted comparative supply runs between Camp Verde and San Antonio. During these trials, the camels carried heavy payloads on elevated pack saddles, matching or exceeding the total capacity of mule-drawn wagons over dry, rocky roads. However, the trials also revealed clear physical limitations. When heavy rains turned Texas dirt roads into slick clay, the camels struggled. Lacking functional hooves, their soft feet lost traction in thick mud, causing some animals to slip and suffer severe joint injuries. The testing showed that camels were not a universal replacement for draft stock. They were specialized tools, exceptionally strong on dry, rocky terrain, but poorly suited for wet, slippery soil. Impressed by the initial Texas reports, the War Department funded a second procurement voyage by the USS Supply, which delivered 41 additional camels to Texas in February 1857, bringing the total imported herd to 75 animals. The most extensive field trial began in the summer of 1857. The federal government commissioned Edward Fitzgerald Beale, a former Navy officer, to survey a wagon road along the 35th parallel from Fort Defiance, New Mexico, to the Colorado River. Beale took 25 camels on a 1,000-mile survey across northern Arizona. During the trek, the pack animals demonstrated distinct operational advantages. They navigated jagged volcanic basalt that split the hooves of army mules and grazed readily on desert scrub, mesquite, and cacti that horses and mules rejected. When the survey party reached the fast-flowing Colorado River, the army mules balked at the water's edge. The camels entered the river and swam across while carrying their pack frames. In his official report to the War Department, Beale expressed strong praise for the pack train, noting that the animals had performed every task required of them across mountains, plains, and rivers. The wagon road surveyed by Beale continued to be used by soldiers and westward travelers, although later railways and highways did not always follow the exact survey line. While Beale's survey confirmed the animal's value on long desert treks, other military applications yielded mixed results. When quartermasters attempted to use camels for express mail delivery and fast courier duty in California, the animals proved poorly suited for high-speed travel over extended distances. Managing the stock also introduced human friction. Driving mules relied on reins, whips, and standard physical commands. Managing camels required balanced weight distribution, specialized knot-tying, and calm handling techniques. When inexperienced American soldiers mistreated the animals, the camels retaliated by biting, kicking, or spitting. Unfamiliarity with camel pack saddles often led to improper loading, causing severe saddle sores on the animals' backs. Later accounts frequently asserted that unfamiliar horses and mules panicked at the scent of camels. The surviving quartermaster logs are less consistent, suggesting that horse reactions varied by location and depended on how gradually the animals were introduced to one another. In California, where part of the herd was transferred to Fort Tejon and later the Los Angeles Quartermaster Depot, cost records tell a nuanced story. While camels on active desert treks foraged successfully on native brush, stabled animals in Los Angeles required regular rations of oats, barley, and hay, generating feed expenses that rivaled standard army stock. Some reports from officers in the field recommended expanding the program, but the timing points to a larger explanation for why it stalled. By 1860, escalating national political tensions absorbed the attention of Congress, and requests for additional quartermaster funding were set aside. In early 1861, the outbreak of the American Civil War disrupted the institutional structure managing the experiment. Jefferson Davis resigned from the United States government to become President of the Confederacy, leaving the program without its primary political sponsor. In February 1861, Texas Confederate forces seized Camp Verde, taking control of the primary camel herd. Confederate quartermasters showed little interest in long-range desert transport projects, using a few animals for local mail and salt transport around San Antonio before largely abandoning their maintenance. In California, Union forces retained the remaining herd. The stock spent several months near Fort Tejon before being transferred to the Los Angeles Quartermaster Depot. With wartime priorities concentrated on major military theaters in the East, quartermasters in California viewed the herd as an administrative burden. With the military command structure severed and key personnel reassigned to wartime duties, the institutional framework required to evaluate and integrate the stock vanished. As the war drew to a close, the Quartermaster Department moved to liquidate the remaining stock. The California herd was sold at a public auction at Benicia in 1864. Following the end of the war, federal forces recovered Camp Verde in Texas. In 1866, the Quartermaster Department auctioned off the surviving Texas herd to private buyers, circus owners, ranchers, and mining companies. A number of animals escaped or were turned loose into the wild by private owners, surviving in the arid basins of Arizona, Texas, and northern Mexico. Sightings of feral camels were recorded by southwestern travelers well into the early 20th century. The historical record shows that the Army's camels were neither a ridiculous failure nor a perfect transport solution. They performed remarkably well in several heavy freight and survey trials, but they also required specialized handling, struggled in wet mud, and were ill-suited for high-speed courier roles. The Civil War did not destroy a fully developed camel transport system. It interrupted an active experiment before the Army had finalized where the animals worked and where they did not. The camels mastered many parts of the American desert, but the Army never turned that operational trial into a permanent institution.